Hello and welcome to the round so far for round 21, brought to you by AAMI. I'm Xander McGuire and I'm joined by Kate McCarthy, as always, at AFL House. Well, there's been so many complaints about this season becoming a stalemate. The top 9 has drawn away from the bottom 9. The Pies have been 2 games on top of the ladder for as long as we can remember. And in the space of 48 hours, Kate, this season, this Premiership race has been blown apart.
It has. Now, Collingwood have lost 3 of their last 4 games, with the Lions getting the job done at the G tonight by 27 points. The first win over the Pies at the MCG since 2014. And Collingwood now, you can see, have given up that top spot on the ladder. Yes, all due to percentage, but Adelaide, their win on Thursday night, keeps them in that top spot.
Which we'll get to Adelaide in a second. Staying on the Lions and the Pies, Hugh McCluggage, what a season he's putting together, looking to maybe secure that All-Australian midfield spot. You were massive on his game and the impact that he had on the players around him.
Yeah, he has had a fantastic season, as you say, Xander, but tonight he really owned that midfield for the Lions. 34 disposals, 14 contested, 8 clearances, 7 tackles and 6 score involvements. It was another brilliant performance from him. It was some of the things that you don't normally put down Hugh McCluggage for through the midfield, with some big tackles, as we saw, just some huge moments from him winning the ball back in really dangerous areas. And he has certainly made his mark as the number 1 midfielder for the Brisbane Lions. And I think if we have a look at the dominance through the midfield, because that's where this game ultimately was won and lost. The Lions, the big numbers through there for Lachie Neale, Hugh McCluggage, as we just touched on, Josh Dunkley, Will Ashcroft, but all facets of the game, their score involvements, their clearances. And then you look on the flip side and Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos, some big numbers at the top of that. And then Pendlebury and Long, a poor game from Long. But the question I have around Collingwood at this stage is, what is that midfield balance? What does the mix look like? Because at the moment, if Josh Dacos or Nick Dacos aren't winning the ball out of the centre, who's actually doing it? And we saw Steele Sidebottom play a really good game, or really good sort of month of football, at the start of the season when he was playing that inside mid role. We saw Jack Crisp go over to Fremantle when he had the opportunity to play inside mid and had a really good performance. And it's almost like they can't find the right balance at the moment with this midfield side, and it's almost because they have an embarrassment of riches. So they've had so many big guys performing. They've got guys coming back in. Tom Mitchell missed out this week. Where's their balance and how do they sort that out? It's round 21. How do they get that balance right?
Well, is the runway a bit too short? Only 3 weeks of home and away left, and some pretty tough clashes as well for the Pies coming up.
Yeah, they do. They have obviously a big 3 weeks coming up now, giving up that top spot. But they've got to work out what it looks like and they've got to persist with it. They've got to stop mixing things up, because there's 3 rounds of football left. There's finals to go. And come crunch time, who's the starting midfielders for the Collingwood Football Club? I think at the moment we're not quite sure, and they're not quite sure either.
Well, you talk about the work that the Brisbane midfielders did up the ground, but it'd be remiss of us not to mention Logan Morris, who is getting it done. In an era of 208cm Sam Darcy key forwards, it's the 191cm Logan Morris with all of his craft that's making the difference for the Lions.
Well, at pick 43 in the draft, this guy is getting ultimate bang for buck. He kicked a career-high 6 goals. And a pretty big game to do it in, really, in front of 82,000 fans at the MCG. This guy's got a premiership already. He's kicked 6 on the G now, and he was huge for them. It sort of really did highlight, remember the start of the season, how good Collingwood were defensively. Yep. Well, Logan Morris kicked 6 on them. Smith kicked 3 from the Lions as well. And it was an evening where Darcy Moore and the likes of Charlie Dean, they looked a bit shaky behind the ball. And that's where we started to look for Collingwood. Their tall guys or their big guys down back couldn't quite get the job done.
For players that played the entire game, Darcy Moore was the lowest ranked by the AFL metrics. Another guy who has had a disappointing night tonight, but ultimately an incredibly disappointing season by his standards, is Dan Houston. The move to Collingwood from Port Adelaide for the dual All-Australian just hasn't been what he would have wanted. Craig McRae's spoken about wanting to get the ball more in his hands. He's had averaged 23 disposals 3 seasons in a row at Port Adelaide. He's down to 16 at the Pies. But when he had it in his hands tonight, it wasn't happening either.
Yeah, he looks like a player really low on confidence for me. He's really struggling to find his best footy at the Magpies, whether that's how they're using him, whether it's their system that doesn't quite suit him. We're used to seeing Dan Houston getting handball receives, getting the footy in his hands and breaking lines. That's not what we're seeing currently for the Collingwood Football Club. And when you look at their other defenders down there, so they've got Quaynor, Maynard, Perryman, who's played down there as well, and Josh Dacos. I'm starting to question if at the moment with the form that he's in, if Dan Houston is in the best 22 currently for the Magpies. So that's another question that they're going to have to work out the answer to fairly quickly with 3 rounds remaining.
Well, just briefly, you touch on Perryman, the other recruit there. A contract worth about $900,000 a year. Are you seeing enough output from him, and the way that they're using him, is it right? Is it working?
I think he's been a pretty good role player for them since getting them across. I think he's played his role. He's playing the role that they need him to.
Yep.
I think contract value, when you put that on, that's what they knew they were getting with him. That's what they decided to ultimately pay him. I don't think you can then expect a magnificently bigger output from a guy that you're getting to play a role. But I think Dan Houston is the one for me that they're starting to sort of work out whether he is in their best 22 and where they get their best out of him from.
Well, Collingwood supporters were incredibly excited to see Jordan De Goey return to the side for his first AFL game since round 8, and of course Bobby Hill coming into the team after missing for 5 weeks with personal reasons. What did you make of the management? Bobby Hill started as a sub, De Goey came off halfway through that third quarter. Do you think they got it right? And also just their impact on the clash at large?
Yeah, well, it felt like it was pretty much a pre-planned sub that they executed. They knew the minutes that Jordan De Goey was going to play coming into the side, and they knew the minutes that Bobby Hill was going to play. So you see there about 10 minutes to go in the third quarter. Bobby Hill was then added into the match. So De Goey ended up with 12, a goal and 4 clearances. He did look back to his dynamic best through the midfield. Bobby Hill obviously finishes with the goal, but I think the question marks around that will be, well, are you better off playing one of them back in the VFL and getting a full game out of the other, or managing it accordingly with a genuine sub? But I think the thing that sort of didn't play into their hands with the way they wanted to manage this was the fact that round 21, they're both available. They're playing a big match on a Saturday night, but they need these guys at their best come the back half of the year and come finals. So I think they sacrificed a little bit tonight to make sure that they're at their best when they're playing finals football.
Are they getting a bit cute in sacrificing a bit tonight against the reigning premiers, considering that, you know, this race is getting very tight? Adelaide have taken top spot. They've got the Crows in 2 weeks. Hawthorn next week, who have their season on the line. Are they getting a bit cute?
No, I think this was a genuine management issue that they had to get through. They had to get these two playing footy. If they wanted them back in the side to push for finals, they need them playing those minutes now, get that done, and then they can build on that for weeks to come. It
was a demolition job between Gold Coast and Richmond as Gold Coast really start to announce themselves as a genuine contender for this season. Jai Farah, he was a player though for Gold Coast. Over the last few weeks, you've noted him, but today was another really strong performance for him again.
Yeah, I just want to note his team first mentality. So he laid some big tackles. He's become a very good pressure forward in the last 2 weeks for them. And Bailey Humphrey here, so it's a brilliant tackle from Jai Farah. Humphrey takes the advantage. He turns around and apologises profusely, but that is a pivotal moment for showing how team first this guy is. And Footy Karma, the next goal that goes inside, he gets on the end of it and gets his just desserts. But you see so many players that lay that tackle, that put the pressure on and dirty up a little bit that their teammates taken the goal off him, but he could not be happier to be playing in the team. He's playing some really good football, kicked 3 last week, 2 this week, and is showing why he is important in that forward line for the Suns.
Gold Coast made a mockery of the Lions last week and did the same to Richmond today, but would you be concerned as a Richmond supporter? Of course, we've been impressed by what they've done coming off the back of last season and, you know, such a young side. But this was a really bad day for them offensively.
Yeah, it was. It was, as we can see, their 5th lowest score since 1925. So wasn't a good day in front of the sticks for the Richmond Football Club. And Gold Coast showed how much of a gap there is between them and the team that's sitting 16th on the ladder. But their set shot kicking was what really let them down. They kicked 2 goals 11 in total, but from set shots, 2 goals 5, and the second of which came with a minute to go in the game. So they'll be ruining a few opportunities to have made it look a little bit more tidy, but ultimately the gap between some of the best teams in the competition and the worst teams in the competition is starting to really show.
Umpire contact has been firmly on the agenda over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and Toby Nankervis has just cleaned up the ump today. Brings us to our launch zone, Kate. It wasn't necessarily the incident itself that you really didn't like.
No, it's nothing to do with sort of the incident itself, but it's the way in which it plays out. So the reason that this contact is made is, one, the bounce is made and the umpire's a little bit off balance as he starts to back out of the contest, and Nank makes contact with him as a result. So if you see here, the ball gets tucked behind the umpire, which is the path that Nankervis is taking to get that centre bounce. And Greg Swan's been pretty strong on the fact that he's not a fan of the centre bounce. And I think that there might be the thing that pushes the centre bounce away from the game, because if he's balling that ball up the umpire there, he exits straight out of the stoppage. There's no contact made. And I think if you're looking at this from an umpire contact perspective, that is the realm or the argument for there to be no more centre bounces, or potentially one a game at the start for the footy romantics that love the thud of the ball into the ground on the last day of September for a grand final. But I think for the safety of the umpires, it actually puts them in a really vulnerable position. They don't know where the ball's gone because it's so unpredictable, and they also have no awareness of where the ruckman is around them because of the skill that's needed to execute it. So I think that's probably put a little bit of an exclamation point on that argument.
Still be expecting Toby Nankervis to probably cop a sanction, or at least Michael Christian to have a close look at that one. Let's go to Friday night footy at Adelaide Oval. 50,000 in the house for one of the games of the year. A game that was just defined by momentum swings, and they came for both sides in the last quarter. It was a thriller.
Yeah, they did. The Adelaide's composure in the big moments in the fourth quarter really stood up and showed how far they have come as a football club. Just multiple opportunities, and it's nice to see their big key three key forwards standing up in such big moments for them. You just see times where Hawthorn had opportunities to put more scoreboard pressure on Adelaide, or even get out in front in the fourth quarter. Their pressure was too good for them. This composure here from Tex Walker to go back, to buy himself time, and then again here Rankin winning a genuine one-on-one who's against Josh Battle, who's been a very good one-on-one defender, going back to buy himself time, and guess who pops up? The man that started to play with the composure himself. And then this just really puts a highlight on the ability to not quite have the same amount of composure in front of goal for D'Ambrosio. And this is the kick-in from that play as well. Just Adelaide's ability to take the game on, to take marks when they need to go quickly when they need to as well, and find targets. So I think it was a big tick for the Adelaide Football Club, especially in those big moments of the fourth quarter.
So many mature players like Tex Walker, and led by Jordan Dawson, who played an incredible game. But it's the depth of this Adelaide team that perhaps we didn't really see at the start of the year. We'll have a look at how the AFL.com experts saw the depth of Adelaide at the start of the season. And it's fair to say that the players in there are still the stars that are driving this side, but it's the depth, it's the players they've discovered that have come out of the woodwork again in season 2025 that's making them so dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, even the first one there, Wayne Miller playing 19 games for the season. Berry, who started the sub multiple occasions, has finally got his spot and has made it really, really well through the midfield for them, and a big body in there. And then the last one down there, Hugh Bond, he came into the side for his first game of the season on Friday night, and he really stood up. And I think the thing that I want to highlight with this is you need many things to go your way when you're going to win the Premiership, or if you are a genuine Premiership contender. You need really strong defence, which they clearly have. You need attacking prowess, which obviously they have as well. And you also need depth in your squad. And they show that they have genuine depth throughout this season, but particularly on Friday night, the outs that they had. So Laird was outmanaged. Max Michaelaney, who's been one of their better defenders for the season, they lose him, but they lose nothing because of the depth that's coming through. So I think that's why they genuinely have really a huge ability to go far in the finals. We know now that they're probably going to finish top two home finals at the Adelaide Oval. It's a scary prospect if you are an opposing team coming up against the Adelaide Crows at the Adelaide Oval in a final.
And what a player Josh Worrell's become for them as well, the number one interceptor in the game in what effectively has been his first full season of footy without injury. Hawthorn took a gamble. We talk a lot about the three-headed monster of Fogarty, Thilthorpe and Tex for the Crows. They unleashed the four-headed monster. And it's fair to say, by the numbers, it probably didn't go the way that they wanted. Maybe it didn't affect the game in terms of, pressure and that kind of thing. But you look at these numbers, they sub Culture out of the game. Will they persist with this? Yeah,
look, I think it'll probably change for next game, but I'm not saying that it necessarily didn't work. I know the numbers on the screen look quite low for Culture. They had Warple to sub him in, but I think the way that it played out, the Gunston this season has clearly surpassed their expectation, or most people's expectation for him. And they had Lewis Choldeer available, and they've all come into the side at a similar time. Obviously, they had the luxury a couple of weeks ago without Chol being available, but it is a genuine squeeze for them now to work out what their balance looks like, who's the best three tools that they're going to play. And the thing that pops up with Mabior Chol is he's a really good pressure forward, which I think is something that gets missed with him. But also, he goes in and plays that second ruck role, and that's who they want playing it. They don't want Gunston, they don't want Lewis playing it. So I think that does become a genuine headache for them as to where the balance is and who plays in those three tall positions. But another thing that throws a huge spanner in the works, Xander, you reported it this afternoon, that Will Day is now out for the season.
Well, this is an unmitigated disaster for Hawthorn. Will Day is their most important player, their most skilled player. He's their fire starter. He's unbelievable. And you see the ice being applied to his foot there. It's the same foot that kept him out for 4 months this season with a stress fracture in the navicular bone. He's got bone stress in the same foot, and his season is now officially over. Further scans will determine the path forward for him. This was a really interesting moment, though, in the last quarter. He cramped up in both calves, and it goes to show that Hawthorn aren't putting that much stress through him because he's only on half training loads at the moment, Will Day. But the game was stopped for him at a pivotal moment when momentum was everything, and it was for a cramp. Where does this go now? Because this rule was really introduced for concussions and really serious injuries, and it seems like something that if a team wanted to, in the pointy end of the season, they could manipulate.
Yeah, that's the talk that's sort of coming out of this incident, which is probably fair considering we are watching and protecting the head of the player. It was clear there was no head knock in that situation for Will Day. I think that probably needs to be play on once the umpires have clarified that. I understand that since the Schultz situation, there has been a lot of backlash over whether the game needed to be stopped, and it wasn't. So ultimately, the umpires come under a lot of scrutiny for that. I think once it's clear that the injury is not a head injury that's sustained to the player, it needs to be play on, because the momentum shift in a moment like that in a big game can be costly.
Now, we spoke about Hawthorn sort of hanging by the skin of their teeth into the 8 after losing that game on Friday. The Will Day news comes on the Saturday. They have Collingwood and Brisbane that are 2 of their last 3. Is their season over?
I'm not going to say it's over, absolutely not. There's still 3 winnable games for them there. They've got Collingwood, as you said, Melbourne and Brisbane, and they're in as good a position as any to challenge those teams. I think they've left themselves a lot of work to do with some of the games that they dropped earlier in the season, but it's definitely not over. It's going to be tough for them to make it, but if you do make it on the back of those 3 games, you are primed and you are ready to go for some big games in September. So they have a big 3 weeks coming up, but their season's absolutely not over.
Sydney prevailed in the Pride game at the SCG today over Essendon, a result that you would have expected, but Essendon showed a fair bit of fight. To the Swans and how they got over the line, well, what a revelation. We shouldn't say revelation because he's been good for a long time, but since he's come into the side, Errol Gulden's made such a difference.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know how good Errol Gulden is and how good he has been for Sydney for a long time, but his impact, I think he's showing in the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks that he is genuinely their most important player at the club. He had another 30 disposals, 24 of those uncontested. The metres gained was through the charts as well, but his ability to break lines, to get the ball, accelerate out of contest and just make it a real nightmare for any players up the field that are trying to defend has just been super evident, and nothing but impressed by Errol Gulden since he's come back from injury, and how it's been able to lift the rest of the Swans around him as well has been extremely evident.
Amazing player, was great today. Is he the ultimate team man? Let's have a listen to his interview with Ben Dixon after the game.
Do you know you've single-handedly stopped a ruckman getting 40 disposals? He ended up on 39.
Oh, no. I always get told not to handball it to ruckman, though, so...
Last minute of the game, Brodie Grundy streaming past. Would you give him the ball?
No. Well, you don't give ruckman handballs, do you? He reckons he's a bit of a unicorn and he reckons he needs to be used for handball receives, but I don't know about that.
Well, at least you look flat there, Errol, but Brodie Grundy stranded on 39 touches. A word on him, is he the All-Australian ruckman? How well is he going at the moment?
I think Max Gawn is still the All-Australian ruckman, but you can't take anything away from Brodie Grundy. He has had a magnificent back half of the season and nearly got to 40 disposals this afternoon.
Melbourne had their biggest win over West Coast in history today, 83 points, and it was the Premiership quarter that proved the decider.
Yeah, it was a big bounce back from Melbourne. We know how disappointing last week was for them, and namely the fourth quarter, but they had a massive third term. They kicked 10 goals in the third quarter, 10 goals to 3 to be exact. And Harvey Langford had another nice performance from him, 16 disposals, 3 goals. Bailey Fritsch, 4 goals. But the man that I said is still the All-Australian ruckman, or still should be in that point, is Max Gawn. He was everywhere, competed in the air, really worked hard all around the ground, and just showed again why he is such a dominant force in the AFL.
Yeah, fantastic Max Gawn as always, and his leadership off-field over the last month or so as questions have come left, right and centre of the D's has just been so pivotal to the general integrity of that footy club. Jai Culley was something that was really exciting for D's fans, playing his first game for the club today. Exciting for D's fans. How would you feel if you're a West Coast supporter? They had this guy on their books, they want priority picks, they want all the help they can get, but yet they're letting these guys go who come back and punish them on the other end.
Yeah, played 12 games for West Coast and was delisted, and then got another opportunity as a SSP signing for Melbourne this season, and really looked like he has some huge skill sets in the air, and his kicking was really nice as well this afternoon. But he showed really good signs for West Coast when he was playing. He kicked a four-goal game against Port Adelaide, and then had the ACL injury, couldn't quite reclaim his form, and then got delisted from the West Coast Eagles. But he had nothing but positive signs for a Melbourne Football Club fan. But as a West Coast Eagles fan, as you said, you'd probably be watching that thinking, how did we let this guy go?
Now, whoever said the Bulldogs couldn't beat a top 9 side? This was the shellacking that no one saw coming, at least not by this scale. The Dogs beating GWS by 88 points, and it was just on from the start, wasn't it?
It was. This was the first goal of the game. About 30 seconds in, Sam Darcy quickly asserted his dominance, and it was a huge display from the Western Bulldogs. Their 7th win by 60-plus points this season. They've now won 9 of the last 10 games against GWS. They've beaten a top 9 side now. Twice they've beaten the Giants, who are sitting in that top 9. And they showed again how quickly they can score and how big they can go. And it's been, again, the dynamic duo of Norton and Darcy. And these are the most goals in the AFL since round 14. So Jeremy Cameron, obviously 31-10. Aaron Norton has also kicked 31-10. Obviously, Jeremy Cameron has a game in hand on that, but that is surprising for some people, you would think, considering the talk about Jeremy Cameron and the form he is in. Well, Norton and Darcy, they are proving to be a 1-2 punch that is very hard to stop.
Well, Adam Kingsley spoke post-match about how they just got smashed in the contest, the Giants. 88 points, 3 weeks out from the finals. Can you be taken seriously as a contender with that sort of result so close to crunch time?
Oh, that's something that they're definitely going to review hard. But we've seen the bounce back factor from so many teams this season. I think obviously a disappointing performance last week in the first half. They bounced back really well in the second half, but the signs were sort of still there on Thursday night that ability to allow teams to dominate them. Couldn't quite wrestle back the momentum like they could against Sydney, left themselves way too much work to do and just got owned in the midfield, really.
Let's have a look at the rest of the rounds coming up tomorrow. We've got St Kilda and North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, which could be a pretty even contest. Geelong and Port Adelaide as Jezza makes his charge towards the ton for the season. And then Fremantle and Carlton, which will be a great game as well. And there's been a bit of drama over in Western Australia. We spoke about Collingwood's defence and the reinforcements they need. Well, Michael Voss wasn't shirking how he felt about Craig McRae going on that now famous first date with Jack Silvani. This is what he had to say to journalists in the West.
Where I sit very much is respecting the privacy of the player. I guess it's not for me to announce something like that on behalf of someone, because they're the ones that have got to walk back into the locker room. So I can't speak to how other coaches will go about that, but what I can say is how we would go about it. And I guess in that instance, we'd probably choose not to make that sort of announcement.
Well, from triple premiership pals, Voss and McRae, to now war of words over Carlton's favourite son. What did you make of McRae's comments in the media and, I guess, their pursuit of Jack Silvani at large? Is he the answer for their defence?
Yeah, I think the way that clubs approach this is very different, clearly, from Michael Voss's opinion then to how Craig McRae went about it. I think ultimately the player, I don't mind what Voss said from that perspective. The privacy is kind of important. We've seen what played out with Oscar Allen earlier this year and the toll that can take on a player re-entering the locker room and what that creates with fans as well and the pressure that puts on them. But I think Jack Silvani has earned himself the right to be someone that is now on the list or the agenda of many clubs out there because he's shown he can play a key defender role. He's been very serviceable for the Carlton Football Club this year, and now he's earned the right to sort of shop himself around and find out where he could go. But yeah, interesting, the differing opinions there from two big coaches in the game.
Well, on that note, that's been the round so far for round 21. Again, only possible thanks to our friends at AAMI. Enjoy your Sunday footy and we'll see you next week.